A super-powered prisoner and his Scooby-Doo gang do the impossible to escape the world's toughest prison and get revenge on the person who ruined his life. Our series begins in one of the greatest and most secure prisons in the world, Nanba Prison. Even the guards boast about this powerful place, which is even more secure than Alcatraz because it has a 0% escape rate and no prisoner has ever escaped from it under any circumstances.
You sure about that?
While these guards were bragging about this great prison, the alarm bells rang to announce that 4 prisoners had escaped. Not 1 or 2, but 4 at once. This escape will make the prison fail more than any other prison, and these 4 prisoners have a 100% escape record, so their success rate is certain. Although the 4 prisoners looked like complete failures, their escape attempt was quite serious. Before reaching the main gate, the guards sealed off the entire section, leaving them in the lurch. But that wasn't enough for the 4 escapees, who were waiting for some traps to entertain them. The guards were ready and did not refuse the escapees any request. The first trap was an incendiary laser beam that would turn anyone who touched it into a roasted human being, but the escapees saw through the trick and 3 of them narrowly escaped without touching the beams. But the 4th was smarter than the others and deactivated the rays, allowing them to pass through unhindered. Just as the 4 thought they had gotten away with everything, they realized that the wall was moving, and if they stayed where they were, they would turn into human sandwiches, all because whoever had neutralized the rays, if he had left it alone, the walls would not have moved. The quartet again managed to escape and climb the wall until they were in a completely new place. A new place meant a new challenge. They wouldn't escape that prison so easily. This time the challenge was a suffocating gas that would put them to sleep. If they kept breathing it in, everyone would pass out and the guards would come and deal with them in whatever way they wanted, and it certainly wouldn't be a comfortable way.
What do you mean by that?
The 4 managed to escape again, much to the disappointment of Yamato, the deputy director of the guards, who decides to go after them himself. But the 4 of them escaped him again after leading him into a maze, much to the shock of all the guards as their manager failed to track the fugitives. The next step for the guards was to fire tranquilizers at the 4, but Nico had to face the tranquilizer shots alone, and of course the tranquilizers didn't work on him, as they didn't reduce his strength at all. The group continued to escape until they reached a giant gate with a temporary detonator that, after the countdown, would explode and kill everyone in the vicinity. To the relief of the guards, they will be able to eliminate the escapees without even engaging them in combat, as the explosion alone will be more than enough to kill them all. But Jugo was able to open the door with ease, and the 4 of them got out of the prison for the first time, and they thought it was over. But what they hadn't counted on was Hajime, the captain of the guard, standing in front of the prison door, waiting for the 4 of them. Hajime doesn't like chases and breathless running. He prefers to stand at the prison's only exit, and anyone who tries to escape will come to him. The fleeing quartet started trying to beat Hajime, who managed to beat them all to a pulp. He throws them back into the cell where they belong, and warns them that repeating these failed attempts won't do them any good, just as it didn't do them before. Finally, we begin to get to know the 4 prisoners, the first being Jugo, prisoner number 15, whose eye color changes depending on the angle of his vision. The second prisoner, Uno 11, is a prisoner who doesn't care about anything but women and gambling, so he always asks if he can meet girls in that prison.
Ah, I see. You're a man of culture as well.
The third prisoner is prisoner number 169, known as Rock, and as his name suggests, he likes excessive force, fighting, and such things that don't seem to have worked so far in that prison. The fourth and final prisoner, Nico, prisoner number 25, whom we've met before, is what you might consider a fellow inmate, as he is an anime lover and always asks Hajime to buy him the latest anime releases. It seems he hasn't heard about our channel, which will provide him with the latest anime. Extras, also summarized.
Bonito.
Of course, Hajime despised the 4 of them and wouldn't accept any requests from them. In the evening, the quartet is surprised by the terrifying news that the police have caught one of the deadliest killers in the history of Japan. The quartet feared that this deadly assassin would join their prison. After all, they were first-rate clowns compared to a serial killer. So they called Sitaro, the guard of the building, and asked him not to bring this killer to them, but the guard forbade them to speak because the prison administration is not to their liking. The next day, Jugo tried to escape alone, but he failed and was caught within a few minutes, which he didn't count on. Before his fellow inmates could bully him for his failure, he told them that for the first time he had seen a woman in prison. This was shocking news to everyone, who started asking what the girl looked like until they realized she was in Hajime's room, so they all escaped and went to that room. There they saw the girl and recognized her as Hajime's sister Hitoshi, much to everyone's surprise. At the same time, Momoko, the warden, arrives at her office, and after realizing that everything is under control, she asks to meet Hajime in person. So Hajime went to her and left his sister with Jugo, who refused to leave the room. Hitoshi told the guards that this was her visit to Gyojo, so they should let him finish the rest of his visit, and the guards obeyed her request. Momoko, on the other hand, warned Hajime about prisoner number 15, who is the son of the most dangerous prisoner Japan has ever known as the Eternal Fugitive, after he embarrassed all the prison guards in the country. At the same time, he was sitting with Hitoshi bragging to her about his skills in opening locks and handcuffs, which made her wonder why he couldn't get out of those handcuffs if he was really that good. He told her the story of how the handcuffs were put on him while he was asleep, and he couldn't tell anything about the guard who installed them except that he had a scar on his neck. Since that day, he has been searching for him all over the place without finding him, convinced that if he finds the guard, he will be able to unlock the handcuffs for himself. Momoko was taken aback by Hajime's response, who assured her that there had been no escape attempts from Section 13 prisoners, which was strange to the sheriff. After their conversation ended, Hajime excused himself and left, trembling with fear as he thought Momoko had learned about the last escape attempt that the quartet had almost succeeded in. What Hajime didn't know was that Momoko was already in love with him and only asked to see him because she wanted to see him, not because she wanted to review prison affairs.
It should have been me, not him!
When Hajime returned to his room, he couldn't find Jugo in his cell, so he kept looking for him until he found him sleeping in Yamato's night duty room, so Hajime took out his anger on Yamato, who spent all night practicing so that he could face the prisoners. He returned to his cell and went out during the food break to share a delicious meal with his teammates. This delicious food played a big part in convincing them not to insist on escaping, as it was probably the best food they had ever tasted in any prison they had ever been in. While Hajime was complaining about the actions of the inmates of Section 13, he received a new summons to the sheriff's office, a summons that Hajime didn't like. Hajime took the long way to the reception desk in the sheriff's office building, where he met the guards from the other sections of the prison. It was tense there, and everyone thought the warden wanted to meet Hajime to make fun of him. Of course, no one knew about her hidden feelings for Hajime. Hajime handed her the files on the 4 prisoners, and Momoko didn't pay attention until Hajime's fingers touched hers. After reading the files, she felt a little curious, since the files confirm that this quartet hasn't even tried to escape yet, but Hajime told her that he has a theory that she has to listen to in order to know everything. Their first prisoner, Nico, an American national, was first imprisoned for drug use and trafficking, which caused him many illnesses. So he got a reduced sentence and entered a medical facility, but he was afraid of needles, so he escaped. In Nanba prison, the treatment is only oral and painless, so he has no reason to escape from the place. The second prisoner is Rock, an American prisoner who was imprisoned for his involvement in several riots, and when he entered other prisons, he always started fights because of the bad food, but in this prison, the food is the best. The third prisoner, Uno, is addicted to gambling and flirting with women. He used to escape from the previous prison so he could meet his girlfriend, but now he doesn't have that motivation. He doesn't have a girlfriend, and in prison he bets on trivial things like magazines to satisfy his gambling urges. The last and most dangerous prisoner, Jugo, is a masterful escapee, and the one who has escaped the most so far. He only does it for fun, but now he wants to settle down a bit, so he has no motive either. After hearing that detailed analysis, Momoko thanked Hajime and dismissed him. Hajime was confident in his analysis of all of the prisoners' personalities, except for Yujo. He knew that he had a secret he needed to discover, so he tightly guarded the place where the 4 were imprisoned. But what Hajime doesn't realize is that the quartet really enjoys spending time in that privileged prison. The next day, Momoko receives a call from a nearby prison and learns that a dangerous new prisoner with a habit of escaping and causing trouble will be transferred to her prison. As usual, she has no idea how to deal with him, so she summons Hajime to discuss the situation with him. As Hajime was on his way, he was stopped by Satoru, who was complaining about being bullied by the inmates, especially those in Section 13. In fact, they had every right to bully him, since he doesn't even look like a prison guard. He's more like a singer in a Korean band, and he's not even the lead singer. Hajime didn't have time for these petty issues, so he told Sitaru outright that he should look for another job that would be more suitable for him than this one. Hajime wanted to help Sitaru though, so he started telling him the best way to deal with the 4 inmates of Section 13. One is Uno, a man who loves nothing more in life than women, so his only solution is to familiarize himself with anything to do with women, say a statistic from a magazine, which is all Uno needs to stay out of trouble for a while. The other, Rock, loves fighting and food, so the best solution is to show him the prison's daily menu and he'll sit in a corner by himself. The third and most dangerous is Nico, although Sitaru thought he was the least troubled, but Hajime told him the way to deal with him is to let him watch his favorite anime series. As for Jugo, his only weakness is his interest in the other 3. He wants them to share his interests, even in escaping, so when the other 3 lose hope of escaping, so will he. Hajime leaves and goes to Momoko's office, where she informs him of the arrival of a dangerous prisoner and informs Hajime that he will be personally responsible for him, but her idea was a little strange. She wanted to put him in Section 13 and let everyone fight each other instead of trying to escape. The arrival of the new prisoner was the talk of the prison, even in Section 13, and everyone wanted to know who the new prisoner was. Until Hajime finally walked in and announced the arrival of a new prisoner named Tsukumo, a shinobi, or what we know as a Japanese ninja. Tsukumo quickly assimilated into the cell and began to explain his life as he belonged to a family of ninja warriors, but he distinguished himself from them by mastering the use of ninja methods to escape from prisons. He told them that he wanted to fight Jugo since he was the best at escaping, which Jugo accepted and told him that the fight would be won by the one who could escape the farthest. So the remaining 3 volunteered to be judges and tell everyone who the winner would be, who would be installed as the best jailbreaker. Sumoko manages to open the first gate with ease, but Jugo tells him that it's cheating since he's not doing anything but following him around without even trying to escape on his own. Before the duo could separate, Hajime appeared in front of them, who told them that any exit from the cell was an escape. Sumoku tried to use fighting techniques with Hajime, but they all failed and he couldn't even touch him. After Hajime finished with them, he sent the quartet back to Section 13 and decided to send Sumoku alone to Section 11 to be away from these troublemakers, as putting all the eggs in the same basket is not the right solution. After finishing with these prisoners, Satoru had another bad idea, which was to start cleaning the prison since it was a Japanese holiday. Hajime stupidly agrees, and they start cleaning Momoko's office, who, as usual, is fascinated by Hajime's muscular physique until they finish cleaning.
Something fishy's going on.
Momoko then gathered everyone together to wish them a happy new year, free from the troubles of that damn prison full of idiots. Then she brought up a new topic, the annual prison competition. A competition in which each section represents one cell, and everyone was apprehensive about Cell 13 entering the competition because the group in that cell has a lot of nerve. But after Momoko realized that having Cell 13 in the competition would give her more time to be by Hajime's side, she decided to put Cell 13 in the competition. While all the guards were busy with the festivities, the cell quartet gathered together, not satisfied with spending years upon years inside the prison walls. So their plan for the new year was the same as every year. They were determined to break out of prison this time. Since it was a quiet night, they decided to try their luck at escaping that night. As soon as the quartet arrived at the prison yard to begin their escape attempt, they were shocked by the gathering of all the prisoners, guards, and even the warden. It was even more shocking that the warden was a woman, as everyone thought that the warden of a prison of this size must be a man to be able to control these losers who always try to escape. Officer Kenshiro announced the annual prison competition in which prisoners and officers team up to form a team, and the winning team gets prizes. The guards get raises and more vacations, and the prisoners have the right to ask for one thing, and the prison administration is obligated to get it for them. Hajime had been assured that Section 13 would not participate, as he had rejected the idea when he spoke to Momoko, not realizing that her heart had once again moved her to include them in the competing teams until she saw him. Hajime was shocked when he heard the name of Division 13 and didn't know why Momoko had put them in. I really don't know how Hajime didn't understand all those hints from Momoko that she wanted to stay close to him. He seems to be both strong and stupid at the same time. After the teams were announced, the division officers began to provoke each other. Hajime didn't want to lose to Goku, nor did he want to lose to KG, the weird, creepy guy who always wears makeup, and yes, I heard KG is a man, not a woman. Before the debate between the 3 guards could get heated, Mitsuru, the annoying commentator who will be commentating the tournament, finally arrives. He announces that the team must win 5 events to win the title. Without wasting any time, the first round, called Kakizumi, began, a simple and easy competition designed to write a Happy Japanese New Year in good handwriting. Of course, this trivial task wasn't for the Section 13 quartet, but they asked Yujo to write it for them because he's the only Japanese in the group. But as expected of a loser like Yujo, he forgot how to write, and the class was about to lose. But Hajime intervened and wrote it in beautiful handwriting, which sealed the first competition in favor of Section 13 without any battles or even a strong rivalry. The new competition needed both strength and speed, and Section 13 will be competing against Section 8. The competition was to finish the inside of the pot without letting the base of the pot break. A competition that required 2 people, one to finish the inside of the pot and the other to protect the base of the pot from being attacked by the other team. Yamamoto, an officer from Division 13, volunteered to finish the inside of the pot and wanted to bring Jugo with him, but Jugo couldn't even hold the hammer with which he would defend the pot. So they decided to replace him with Ruki, who was playing with the hammer because it was easier for him to carry. Team 8 was represented by Officer Inori and a mysterious prisoner who we only know as Number 2. The competition started quickly, and Yamamoto had a peaceful plan. Instead of attacking the other Destiny's base, they should focus on quickly emptying their destiny and not engage in any fighting. Rock doesn't like this cowardly plan, but he agrees to it anyway. Yamamoto jumped to the top of the pot and started emptying it with all his might, leaving Rock at the bottom to protect the base. To his surprise, the pot took a big hit, costing them a point in the first competition. Yamamoto doesn't like the fact that Rock let the other prisoner take the hit, as his only mission in life is to protect the base. But the competition turned into chaos when Rock realized that the other prisoner was Yang. The two had previously shared the same cell, but Rock betrayed him and escaped without him, so Yang was trying to get his revenge again. Yamamoto, on the other hand, remained focused on emptying his destiny and abandoning this hopeless battle. He was sure that Rock would win because he wanted to win so he could bring a pizza oven to his cell, and nothing could stop Rock from eating. Before Inori could realize what was happening, Yamamoto had already finished the competition and emptied the pot, and Section 13 won again. The third competition was a Japanese card game that Hajime decided to let Satoru participate in. He was sure that he would participate because he was the only Japanese, but of course they lost faith in him after not being able to write a good year, so Uno decided to participate instead. He is a professional gambler. Satoru, in a big surprise, beat Keiji easily and effortlessly. Uno was waiting for a chance to cheat, but he didn't really know anything about the game, so everyone expected Section 13 to be soundly defeated, and Keiji told Seiji to just stop Uno from cheating and then he wouldn't be able to predict even one card correctly. But Jugo laughed it off and told him that Uno isn't just a cheater, he's the greatest cheater and has too many tricks up his sleeve to lose easily. At the one time when everyone thought that Uno couldn't even compete because everyone knew he was a cheater, Keiji even told his prisoners about them, which made them focus even more. But what they didn't know was that Uno was much smarter than that. He let them think that he couldn't play and was just waiting to cheat while Uno implemented his game theory and was able to predict many of the cards, which shocked all the opponents. Even his cellmates were shocked by his concentration and sharp, unseen intelligence, as everyone thought he was too stupid to do it. But Uno's motivation was stronger than anything. The item he would ask for if he won was a betting parlor, where all the prisoners could bet and gamble, which would make his time in prison that much better. After winning the first 3 competitions, Nico went to a remote location so he could take his medication out of sight, but he was shocked to see one of the prisoners flying through the air. Nico was horrified by this strange sight and ran away from the place to go to Hajime and tell him what he saw. But Hajime told him to leave those stupid thoughts and become a man because there is no such thing in the prison, and he has to focus because now the victory is only 2 competitions away. The fourth contest will be bigger than the others, with the first meeting between Hajime and Keiji, the weird-looking guy in makeup, and the second meeting between Goku and Yanshiro. The biggest issue was that this particular competition required a lot of power to spin the spindles, and whoever got the other spindle out of the arena was the winner. Nico was shocked to see the opposing team because the flying prisoner in the air was on that team, and he kept telling Hajime about it until Hajime fell to the ground and told Nico to concentrate. The competition started right away, and Nico was serious this time, talking about how he was a hero and was going to save everyone, which made everyone make fun of him for being in prison and talking about honor and honesty. Nico's 3 friends left the place and started moving away from the competition, and none of them cared about the competition in which they had finished their turn. While Hajime was fighting fiercely against Gecko, Momoko was imagining herself dancing with Hajime instead. She was blushing, and everyone thought she was just angry, not ashamed. Nico, on the other hand, was fighting this flying guy who had many other powers besides floating in the air and using long-range strikes. So Nico asked him to teach him these magical techniques, but the bird underestimated Nico's abilities and told him that he was looking for a true student who was willing to learn and develop these techniques. Nico wanted to win because he wanted to order a TV with all the anime episodes on it so he could watch them all the time, just like we all do. When the prisoner provoked Nico and told him that the goal of winning just to watch anime is not a real goal, Nico decided to punish him for that word and used all his strength until he finally managed to hit him with a crushing blow that knocked the bird to the ground, and thus Nico was able to beat him so that he would become his new student according to the agreement between the two of them. Hajime was still fighting until he was finally able to move very quickly and finish off his opponent. Section 13 finally wins the competition and is 1 competition away from winning the New Year's Challenge. Everyone takes a break after all the drama and competition, and Momoko takes a moment to think about Hajime after all the power he's shown until the commentator barges into her office. Until the commentator barged into her office and embarrassed her after seeing her reading a book on date night desserts. Mitsuru couldn't stop talking about the strength of the competition that year and the fact that 2 of the strongest guards in the prison were competing in the finals. But Momoko had an idea that would make the competition even more intense than in previous years. The main purpose of these competitions is to show the real power of the guards to all the prisoners so that they realize that it's impossible for them to get out with such powerful guards. So the new idea this year will be to show the finals of the competition to all the prisoners on screen so that they realize the true strength of their guards. Not only did Mitsuru share Momoko's excitement, he told her that he was looking for a new way to showcase the Valentine's Day celebration, which embarrassed Momoko even more, as she wanted to appear as the harsh prison warden as opposed to what she really is inside, so she kicked Mitsuru out of her office and told him not to come back. At the prison clinic, Hajime's victims, Goku and Donner, were very surprised by their defeat as they were taking a drug made by Prisoner 71, which makes them much stronger and speeds up their recovery, so how could they have been defeated so easily by Hajime and Goku? The only logical explanation was for Jugo, who was already addicted to drugs and medications, so he was not affected when he was exposed to a dose of Prisoner 71's drug. On the contrary, it gave him the euphoria he originally dreamed of, an addict who found his medicine with his fighter. But Hajime's escape from that drug was a mystery. As far as everyone knew, Hajime wasn't using anything, he was just protecting the prison with all his might. At the time, Hajime was sitting in the smoking room, unconcerned about all the trouble that was going on, as he was ready for any competition no matter what it was, having taken out most of the guards on his way to the final. However, the commentator soon announced that the final would be held until the prison was done with the competition, and each prisoner could return to their cell instead of this nonsense. Before the competition begins, Momoko herself announces that it will be the opening of the sake barrels. Whoever can open the barrel first wins the competition. Each team will only consist of 2 guards and a prisoner. Upon hearing these terms, the Section 13 quartet didn't know which one to choose to take part in the competition until Jugo volunteered, since he's the main character and needs to grow up and move away from the secondary roles he's trying to play. The representative of Division 4, Officer Donner, enters the arena, but Hajime doesn't think much of it, asking Yamamoto to participate instead because he's tired of beating all the guards before. But Donner told him to man up and compete with him, and when Hajime looked at Momoko and saw her watching him with a red face, he thought she was insisting that he participate, so he couldn't help but participate so as not to upset the sheriff anymore. The real issue is that Donner just wants to win the competition because he loves Momoko and wants to prove to her that he's the best. The nature of life is that Donner loves Momoko, who doesn't even know he exists, and she loves Hajime, who doesn't care about her and thinks their relationship is an official one between a sheriff and a guard. Hajime's participation wasn't the only surprise of the competition, as the prisoner on Donner's team is Musashi, who has a history with Jugo that none of his friends know about, and certainly not us. The competition starts before we even realize what's going on, and the fight rages on between Jugo and Musashi. But Jugo just wants to learn some information from Musashi. Musashi didn't want that nonsense and wanted to keep fighting until he won the final match and got what he wanted. Musashi was blind because of Gyujo, who had blinded him in the past when he fought with him, so this fight was very important for Musashi to get his revenge. At the beginning of the fight, Hajime found a gun in one of the boxes and thought he could end the fight before Donner could even think of attacking him, but he discovered that the crate was full of dummy weapons with no live bullets, so it had no effect. Donner manages to find a shield to protect him from those fake bullets. All that drama was just to give the competition an air of excitement. But he was surprised to find that he was much weaker than he thought, until he realized that the bracelet on his neck was weakening or disabling his abilities. What really shocked him was Musashi's words when he told him that the only person who could rid him of the bracelet was the man with the scar on his neck. Immediately upon hearing those words, Jugo turned into a madman, wanting to know how Musashi knew that information in the first place and how he knew about the scarred man's story. But Musashi refused to talk and said he would only speak when he was defeated, so Jugo decided to show him his true strength. He kept remembering what that scarred man had done to him until his whole body was on fire and no one knew what was going on. The guard KG told them that this was one of the rarest cases of the human body self-igniting, but no one could explain what was going on. Musashi told him that he had exposed himself to everyone in the prison as a monster disguised as a human being, but he was more concerned with finding out the truth about the man with the scar on his neck. After the escalation in the arena, everyone was surprised and excited to see what would happen in the rest of the competition. But we're going to go back in time a bit to the pre-competition so we can find out more details, specifically Tsukumo, the failed ninja warrior who was defeated by all the guards in his only escape attempt so far. Sometime after Tsukumo was imprisoned, a guard told him before the competition that someone was waiting for him in the visiting room, so Donner decided to meet this strange visitor. He's in prison after all, and there's nothing new he can do. When Donner enters the visiting room, he is shocked to see that the visitor is his former manager Hatamori, but because of the issues between the two, Tsukumo refuses to talk to him and asks him how he knew he was here. His manager told him that his scandal was published in all the newspapers and any normal person would know about his presence here, but Tsukumo also refused to talk about anything and wanted to end the interview. Hatamori started talking to Tsukumo and told him that he was one of the most important action actors in recent years and that he had taken care to hide the story of his imprisonment and told everyone that he had disappeared on vacation to regain his luster. So Hatamori hoped to work with Tsukumo again after his release from prison, since everyone was now eagerly awaiting his return. Tsukumo rejected the offer and told Hatamori that he would never forget what this man had done to him and the director who tried to convince him that she was his mother. Hatamori began to remember what happened before when the director decided to work on a new movie about a ninja, but Hatamori wasn't interested in that story because that kind of story is always produced and never sells. If you just type in action movies in the search bar, you will see many stories of the rise of ninja heroes. But this time the director had a different point of view. She would look for a real ninja to play this role, and that way she would be guaranteed to make a work that would be impossible to make a similar one. But Hatamori objected to that idea. How would they even get a ninja, as most of the rumors are that it's a myth in the first place? But then the director took Hatamori to a remote place in the forest that she had read about but couldn't enter because a guard prevented her, which confirmed her sense of a shinobi village for ninja warriors, and Hatamori's opinion didn't change. Assuming it's a village full of ninja warriors, how can they take a warrior? Of course he'll beat them, otherwise he wouldn't be a strong fighter. While the duo were discussing how to find that fighter, they heard the sound of a little boy crying as he tried to train to become a ninja. As soon as he saw the director and Hatamori, he got scared and ran away from them, but not too far. They were able to catch him easily. The kid, who was actually Tsukumo, told them that he was training to become a ninja, and only then would his parents, who had left him when they realized he wasn't a strong fighter, come back. This was an excellent opportunity for the director, who was willing to do anything to get a shinobi actor. So she pretended to be his mother, regretting that she had abandoned him when he was young, and now she was back again. With some fine acting from a talented director and, of course, the mind of a little boy who wants to return to his parents, Tsukumo was completely convinced and went with the director to her house. From then on, the director treated him as her own son, and of course, she gained a lot of fame by proving that she had a real shinobi child with many talents. Hatamori hated Tsukumo because he wanted to be a successful actor but couldn't. No matter what happened, Tsukumo remained adamant about not talking to Hatamori or returning to acting with him. When Tsukumo came out of the visiting room, he found Jugo sitting outside hearing everything that had been said. Tsukumo told Jugo that he didn't want to go back to acting, even though it was an easy and simple profession, and he was paid a lot of money, other than fame and acclaim from everyone. A ninja fighter must live to defend and fight, not to act like he's fighting. What would his real family say if they saw him pretending to beat someone up? So Tsukumo ran away from them and wanted to return to the life of a ninja again. The first step is to try to go back to training in the forest to gain his strength back. But when he goes back to training, he finds that he has lost most of his skills. So he decided to escape to the forest, but he lost his way and found himself on private property, so the police arrived and arrested him for trespassing, and he has been in jail ever since. Tsukumo was in no hurry to get out of prison because he wanted to study all the possibilities until he found the right path. Now that he's done talking to Jugo, Jugo tells him that he has to get ready for the competition or else everyone will get bored after talking about the past. Jugo was still fighting in the ring and was still in a state of self-ignition, which burned a large part of the ring, so the guards decided to keep the prisoners away from the place for their own safety. Momoko also ordered the guards to disconnect the monitors so that the prisoners wouldn't see their friends' superpowers or they would be encouraged to rebel and fight the guards. Sitaro and Keiji begin to push the prisoners away and try to stop the fight, the outcome of which is unknown, but the powerful Musashi also hits the guards from afar to get them out of the way and continue the fight he started until he is victorious. He threatens that he won't let go and will cut off his hands as he gouged out his eyes in the past, and that way he'll know how stupid he was when he refused to say the name or location of the scarred man. Musashi remembers the day he lost his eye when he was in a fight with Jugo, and the latter lost his eye with a sword. From then on, Musashi decides to keep looking for him until he finishes him off. In the midst of this out-of-this-world competition, the guards begin to worry about the fate of the prison and the prisoners. The guard told Jugo's friends that in that case, not only would Jugo be sentenced to solitary confinement, but he would be retried and likely receive a harsh sentence to spend the rest of his life in a filthy prison. That wasn't the issue now. This crazy fight has to stop. Every time a guard enters the ring, Musashi takes him out. Musashi wants to take Juju's handcuffs, so his best plan is to burn him to ashes, while Juju wants to cut off his arm so he can talk. Either way, if the fight continues, no one will get out of that ring intact. So the prison administration decides to send in their best guards to stop the farce, so Keiji and Goku enter, and of course the fight can't go on without Hajime, the deputy sheriff. At first, Hajime tries to convince Jugo to stop what he's doing and just settle for solitary confinement for a few days and everything will be over instead of burning the prison to the ground and eventually not getting the information he wants, but Jugo refuses because his head is boiling. He's literally boiling, he's on internal combustion mode. Keiji and Goku teamed up against Musashi. Although he underestimated them at first, he didn't realize the power of their weapons. Goku noticed that Musashi's flamethrowing takes time to recharge, so he let him flamethrow, then flew into the air and hit him with the whip that choked him, and Keiji threw another whip at him. So they were able to completely control him and drugged him as well, thus eliminating the first prisoner, while no one dared to approach Jugo, who was in an unnatural state of agitation. So, as usual, Hajime went to him and told him to end this farce or he'd have to kill him, but he didn't respond. When his three friends see what's going on, they decide to get involved and try to stop Hajime from killing him. When they tried to catch him, they were all thrown to the ground, but Uno got back up from the ground and stood in front of Jugo, who was swinging his sword to finish him off. But Uno held on to hope and told Jugo that they were his friends and he shouldn't treat them that way, at least not now, that they were trying to save him. But Jugo dropped his sword on Uno's head. Only Hajime's arm saved him. Hajime had had enough after all that, so he hit Gyujo with a fist to the stomach, knocking him to the ground. Then he leaned over and kept hitting him in the face until Jujo passed out, but Hajime didn't stop. Only Momoko's screams told him to stop and call for an ambulance to help Jugo. A few days later, the guards blamed Hajime for ruining the competitions and for being too cruel by deliberately knocking out Jugo in front of everyone. But Hajime didn't want to listen to those words anymore, so he left them and went to Section 13. There, everyone in the cell was angry with him, but he confessed that he didn't try to finish him off but wanted to teach him a lesson and told him that he would wake up in a few more days with a broken face because the fists weren't weak at all. After the tragedy was over, all Hajime could think about was who Musashi really was, what he was doing in prison, and what his goal was in obtaining Jugo's collar. His train of thought was interrupted by an annoying commentator who left him a message from Momoko that he had been suspended for 3 days as punishment for his violent behavior. Hajime was surprised by this punishment as he thought he would be fired and thought that Momoko would punish him later after checking on Jugo's condition. He didn't know that Momoko only did this punishment so that no one would suspect her, but she was sad that she would spend 3 days without seeing him. The 3 days flew by and Hajime returned to Section 13 and the first thing he did was talk to Satoru, the guard who had been filling in for him in his absence. As for the rest of his cellmates, none of them had come out of their comas and were still grieving over what had happened. Even though Jugo himself tried to eliminate them, but that's true friendship. After learning all the details, Hajime goes to confront Oniri, the guard in charge of Musashi's arrest. Hajime tells him that they need to come up with a solid plan to find out his superpower as well as his relationship with Jugo, who is starting to wake up, and in order to do so, Hajime will go to interrogate Jugo. At the same time, Oniri will be at Musashi's to interrogate him with a walkie-talkie so he can talk to the other side. Hajime would lose his concentration and he might end up killing Gyugo, and Momoko wouldn't punish him. Oniri went to Musashi and told him that he had to cooperate with them until this farce was over, or he'd find himself in trouble. At the same time, Hajime goes over to the wall and tells him that there's no time for apologies and peaceful things, that they're in the middle of an investigation, and that he has to cooperate or he'll get beaten up again. He decides to comply because he's already experienced Hajime's unforgiving fist. Musashi, on the other hand, starts talking on the radio and asks if he's still in the hospital or if he's been discharged. But Oniri warns him that they don't want to waste any more time, and this is not the right time anyway for this gratuitous acquaintance. Musashi quickly cuts to the chase and tells Jugo that all they care about is the man with the scar, so he should tell him more about him, what he looks like, but, of course, he doesn't know anything about the scar and can't describe what the man looks like. What shocks Jugo is that Musashi insists on getting the collar, even though the collar already limits the wearer's strength. That's a big deal. Musashi is stupid, no doubt about it, but that way it's beyond stupid. So Jugo decides to ask Musashi in a straightforward manner why he wants the collar in the first place, and the answer is shocking. Musashi wants it to get Scarface's attention because he wants to take him out as well, just like Jugo. That's because this particular man found Musashi after learning about his superhuman strength, which had been tormenting him all along until he was fed up with it. Scarface told him that he could help him get rid of that power and turn him back into a normal person who could live his life however he wanted. But the biggest shock was that the man lied to him and used him in his experiments until he turned him into a human monster who could control fire and produce flames. He asked them to restore him, but the man refused. When Musashi tried to attack him with his new power, he failed because the scarred man was using a weapon that was impossible to destroy. After a while, Musashi was no longer of any importance to him, so he released him from his leash and let him go. Now Musashi is no longer human, and his only concern is to go back to that place and use his power and the scar owner's weapon to finish him off and take his revenge after his life was wasted. While Gyugo tried to motivate Musashi and asked him to unite together since they want to destroy the same person. Musashi rejects this idea and tells him that even the power he gained is no longer the same, as the doctors in this prison have been drugging him with a new drug that has partially neutralized his power. So now he's powerless and wants to fight one of the most powerful guards in their history. Those weren't the words that Jugo wanted to hear, meaning that Musashi is basically unreliable. After that lengthy conversation, Higashi had a completely different opinion on the matter. He tells Jugo that he's been watching him since he entered this prison, and knows that Jugo's biggest problem is his lack of purpose. So he lumps himself in with Nico, Anno, and Rock because they all want to get at least something out of life, and he's just a naive, greedy guy who wants to get everything. He just wants to put a story in his head that convinces him that he has a purpose in life. Hajime gives Jugo one chance to return to Section 13 with him. Since he won the contest, he has a request that the prison administration must obey. Jugo is not convinced at first because his dignity has been humiliated and he appears naive, but Hajime starts a countdown and demands a decision in the next 5 minutes. He finally agrees and decides to return to Hajime's department. Of course, now you're asking what happened in the 3 days that Hajime wasn't present as Section 13's guard, so we'll go back in time to the day Hajime's 3-day suspension was announced. On that day, Momoko gathered the 3 best guards in the prison, Keiji, Goku, and Hajime's #1 rival, Kenshiro, and told them that during those days they would take turns guarding Section 13. Goku and Keiji don't like this decision at first, but Kenshiro tells them that it's the warden's orders, which he likes, so he decides to get to work quickly. On the three guards' first inspection of Section 13, they marveled at the trio's constant companionship, even accompanying each other while Nico went to the prison clinic to receive his regular treatment. Kenshiro marveled at Hajime's leniency, as only a patient is allowed out of the cell. The trio were discussing the case of their friend Gyojo, who was being treated at the main clinic, not the satellite clinic. When Nico enters the clinic, he finds the head of the medical department, Okina, treating the prisoners, and the doctor sternly asks them to wait for him to finish with the patient sitting next to him. Surprisingly, the patient was the prisoner who was defeated in a card game, so everyone wondered what could have happened to them. There's no way you can get injured while playing some trivial cards, but the doctor was determined to finish his examinations and asked Nico to shut up and not disturb him while he works, because this is not a cell, but a clinic with respect. In the middle of that conversation, the robot nurse Kaguya enters to administer the treatment to Neko, and of course everyone in the clinic flirts with her, as she is the only female they can see and talk to freely without fear of anything. She is a robot after all. We leave the chaos that the trio created in the clinic when they saw the nurse and go to Hajime, who was bored on the first day of his 3-day punishment. Keiji took charge of guarding Section 13 on the first day, and when he passed by the cell, he found the three friends were so sad about their friend that they put a pillow with Jugo's face on it. On the second day, things didn't change much for Hajime, who was still bored and spending time with his annoying little sister. That day it was Goku's turn to guard the dungeon, but he decided not to go easy on them, and from day one he took them to the courtyard to punish them, forcing them to train all day without any rest on the pretext that it keeps them young. All because Goku thought that Hajime was hiding something important in cell 13 and was related to everyone in the cell. On the third and final day of Hajime's sentence, he decided to pass the time in any way he could to come back and finish what he started. Now that we're back to the 3 days where nothing much happened other than crying and lamenting over Jugo, we finally return to our normal timeline after Jugo agrees to return with Hajime to his section. Hajime smoked first because those days were eventful, but strangely enough, Jugo was dumber than you'd expect, as he still doesn't know what the connection between him and Musashi is, until Hajime told him to stop being stupid and use his brain for a minute. It's clear as day, Scarface treated Jugo and Musashi the same way. He kidnapped them both and experimented on them until he gave up on Musashi and let him go after ruining his life. And now Musashi doesn't have that power after the drugs he took in prison. He's still important to Scarface, so Musashi wants to take that collar so Scarface will think he's important too, and that way Musashi can destroy Scarface. Now, Hajime was convinced that Scarface deserved to be crushed, but first and foremost, he's a prison guard, and he's not going to let anyone escape no matter how good their motives are. So Hajime decides that he will sacrifice himself and take revenge on the scarred man just to relieve Jugo. After that news, Hajime went to the cell, and of course the trio refused to talk to him until he told them that he had brought Jugo with him, which made everyone happy, but their happiness was a little strange. For example, Rock kept beating him and asking him why he was so late, even though it was obvious that he was unconscious. After the reception was over, Jugo got down on his knees and apologized to his friends for what he did to them on the battlefield because he almost killed them all if not for Hajime's intervention. Hajime wasn't concerned with such trivial matters, but had to deliver the report of Yugo's recovery to Momoko, who was eagerly awaiting his arrival. But before Hajime could arrive, an annoying commentator arrived who kept giving stupid advice until Momoko eliminated him. When Hajime went in to deliver the report, he found Momoko standing there with blood on her face and thought she was getting ready to kill him. He leaves his report on Jugo on the edge of her desk and flees before she can even speak to him. At the same time that Section 13 was in order, the inmates of Section 8 were trying their hardest to work out after being shamed by their humiliating defeat at the hands of Section 13's representatives. However, Officer Inuri soon intervened and asked Yang, or Prisoner Number 2 as they called him, to go with him to Section 13 because Rock there wanted to meet him again. Yang was surprised by the look of the department and the amount of luxuries they got after winning the last competition, and Rock insisted that Yang taste the pizzas that Shiro, the chef, makes in their new oven. At first, Yang rejects the idea, telling them that he's not hungry and that they have an oven similar to this one and make pizza every day, so there's no need for false advertising. But as soon as he tasted the pizza, he realized that what he was eating was just a layer of dough, and this was completely different. I don't know how prisoners can live in a place like this, but that's what the director wanted anyway. Yang felt a little embarrassed after that hospitality, as he had just made fun of Rock's wish to have a stone oven in his cell, and left the station. After Yang left, Rock ordered more food for Jugo because he was hungry, and although Jugo wasn't hungry, he thought that Rock would accept his apology after almost killing him in the competition. But Rock told him that all that food was because of him. That's because Rock was a troublemaking prisoner, so he got beaten up a lot and wouldn't give any food. Until one day, Jugo saw him in such a pitiful state that he left him a loaf of bread, the last thing he had. But Rock's pride wouldn't let him eat the loaf of bread, but of course it was a stupid decision, and after a while he was so hungry that he ate it against his will. In the midst of all these thoughts, Uno was only interested in his friend Nico, who hadn't eaten with them yet because he was still undergoing treatment. Nico was lying in the hospital bed, feeling deathly lonely as all his friends were nowhere near him, a situation to which he was not accustomed. But his friends arrived just in time with some Chinese food, which, of course, he loved. But what spoiled the atmosphere was that the doctor and one of the scientists fought over some trivial things, and as you know, all scientists are always fighting over trivial things just like us. Then Nico went to a room where they were preparing a surprise for him, and when he entered the room he found a whole game room full of screens and games that he hoped to see someday. Although everyone refused to participate with him at first, they soon turned into children, playing and competing with each other. Even Jugo, who had never played any kind of video game before, joined in the fun like everyone else. After the games were over, even Hajime, who everyone thought was a serious guard who didn't do such frivolous things, joined in. After the games were over, Musashi walked into the room and everyone thought he was trying to cause trouble. So Rock stood in front of him and ordered him to apologize first in front of everyone to his friend Jugo, or he'd get beaten up again. But what they didn't understand was that Musashi had originally come to apologize and pay his respects to Jugo's strength. Musashi wasn't just an ordinary prisoner, he was one of the most important prisoners, and he also had superhuman strength. This was especially interesting to Krishnu, his guard, who made a deal with him to let him out of the cell occasionally if he told him more about his personal life. Kenshiro wanted this story because he knew it would increase his favorability in the eyes of Momoko, who knew nothing about him. Musashi began to tell his story, which began when he was a small child and his temperature was always strangely and inexplicably high. At first his mother tried to contain it, telling him that he was warm as the sun but that he shouldn't overheat. The mother then began to worry too much, so she took him to the doctors to check his condition, but all the tests and x-rays did not prove anything, and the results came out normal, which forced the doctors to advise the mother not to think too much about it. As the years went by, Musashi began to feel like his whole body was on fire and flames were coming out of his body. When he told his mother about these symptoms, she told him to forget about it and not to focus on it, and then it would go away. Years went by and Musashi tried to forget all that happened until one day, while walking down the street, he was shocked and fell to the ground with fire coming out of his body. That was the first time in his life that he showed symptoms in such a horrible way. He was admitted to a hospital with first-degree burns, and the doctors told the mother that Musashi had suffered a rare condition called autoignition, in which fire comes out of the body and burns everyone in the area, including the person himself. But no one has figured out what causes autoignition or how to prevent it, so this tragedy could happen again. The only thing that kept Musashi alive was the love of his parents, who were the only two people who treated him with kindness. But after Musashi was discharged from the hospital, he was shocked that everyone treated him like a monster and kept getting kicked out of everywhere he went. Until the day of the big disaster, Musashi returned home from college to find his house on fire with his family inside. Of course, everyone suspected him, arrested him and put him in prison. There he met the man with the scar on his neck, his first prison in Germany. The man with the scar was called the Overseer, and he would experiment on any prisoner because they wouldn't get out of there and they couldn't sue him. After a while, he was able to get Musashi to control his superpowers, which Musashi didn't want to do. He wanted to give up all his abilities. Then, as we all know, he tried to take out the supervisor, but he blocked all his fire with his strange, inexplicable sword and realized that Musashi was nothing to him and let him off the leash. But of course, Musashi's rage was stronger than anything and he burned down the entire prison, so all the evidence that could have been obtained to prove his case was lost. After Musashi finished the story, he wondered why Kenshiro wanted to know all this information and why he shared his enthusiasm. Kenshiro began to tell his own story. He was a police officer and had heard rumors that some prisons were conducting scientific experiments on prisoners. At first, he tried to publicize the issue and gather evidence, but it was all unsuccessful, and he felt that the entire system was unwilling to convict these criminals. He applied for a transfer to the prison service so that he could get inside the prisons and see if any of them knew anything about the horrible things that were going on. When he saw the strength of Musashi and Jugo, he realized that these things were real and that someone was hiding them from everyone. Kenshiro was so passionate about the idea of revenge and proving that all these things happened that he decided to continue his research with Musashi. Musashi was impressed by Kenshiro's persistence, as he knew all these things and hid them until new evidence came to light, namely, the emergence of Musashi and Jugo's power. When he shook hands with Musashi, he actually felt his temperature rise. Back in section 13, Uno was thrilled to finally be able to create his magical room full of his favorite gambling and card games. When they complained, he told them it was his reward for winning the competition. While everyone was busy in that room, Musashi suddenly walked in, and everyone was shocked because this time his visits were even more frequent. Everyone started to play and have fun, recognizing Hani and Troa, who everyone thought was the most handsome guy in the place. But before they could enjoy the game, Hajime walked in and told them that playtime was over and that they should all go back to the dungeon. After Uno argued that this was his prize and he had every right to use it, Hajime told him that the law only allowed him to play for 1 hour a day, and the whole story of playing all day wouldn't work, otherwise this wouldn't be a prison, it would be an amusement park. After they went back to the cell to go to sleep, Rock saw that Jugo was still staring at the ceiling. When he tried to figure out what he was feeling, Jugo left the room and went out on his own. He kept looking up at the sky, trying to figure out what was going on, what his future would look like, and what he would have done if he hadn't met Scarface, or what we now know as the Overseer. Suddenly, someone came up behind him, tapped him on the shoulder, and told him that he had finally arrived. Jugo was terrified of this person. Who is he, and how did he manage to penetrate the prison and reach him, and how does he even know his name and address him with that accent? When he turned to him, he didn't recognize him either, and kept asking him who he was and what he wanted from him, and when he approached him, the stranger stabbed him with a sword. But soon the sword disappeared and he realized that this person was more dangerous than he imagined. He had just felt the sword, but now he couldn't see anything. The person kept telling him that they used to be friends and played together in the past until someone came and rescued him from the place he was in. Even though that person is considered a traitor to everyone for freeing Jugo, the best test subject, Jugo doesn't remember him. That's why the stranger kept calling him greedy and ungrateful for forgetting the person who helped him the most in his life. Thinking about it, he thought about his past and who might have saved him from that horrible place where he was a lab rat. He also failed to remember the identity of the stranger he was talking to, even though he claimed to have known him since ancient times and had even played with him in the past. But Jugo was fed up with these strange claims, so he decided to end it and told the stranger that if he was on the supervisor's side, he should tell him where he was and end this strange story, because he doesn't remember anything from his past and it's not a good time for riddles. So the stranger tells him he's going to take what's already theirs and draws a line across Jugo's face so he can cut through that area and take it with him. But just before the stranger could do that heinous act, he fought back and beat him up, and before he could finish the fight, the stranger told him that was enough, because he originally came here for 2 reasons. 1, to make sure that Jugo still has the strength he had when he was with them, and 2, he wanted to take a new test subject, and told him he'd take one of his friends this time. As he jumps away, he tells him that he's the elf in charge of the lab where he was locked up before he managed to escape with the help of someone else. But he could only remember the man's voice telling him to run away quickly and live his life freely because the experiments would kill him. After that terrifying incident, he was left gasping for breath, knowing that the organization would not let him live his life, and now they threatened him with his closest friends. While he was immersed in these terrifying thoughts, Hajime walked in and asked him why he was shaking, and he told him that for the first time he was afraid of the future this time, not only because of the organization that was after him but also because of his friends. When he returned to the dungeon, everyone was in a great mood after playing games and eating pizza, and everyone was talking, except for Jugo, who didn't say a word. Then everyone noticed his unexplained silence, so Uno gave him a great idea. Why don't we try to escape one more time? If we succeed, we can finally escape, but if we fail, then we will fail again, just like every time. The quartet escaped again until they reached the most difficult part of the escape, facing Hajime, whom no prisoner had ever gotten past before. Before going into battle with Hajime, Jugo locks his friends out of the gate and decides to face Hajime alone. Everyone was worried about Jugo. The last time the two faced off, Jugo was almost gone for good, but this time Jugo used all the power he could muster. He turned one of his arms into a sword and began to face Hajime, who was still much stronger than him, and hit him with many powerful blows. This caused the 3 prisoners to ask Saitorao to let them through so that they could pass to their friend Jugo and save him, because the guard's main job is to protect the prisoners, and that way Hajime would finish Jugo off. Satoru lets them through, and they manage to stop Jugo and convince him that this fight will finish him off. After the 4 of them are back in the cell, he realizes that this prison is his life, and he has to protect his friends as they protect him.